If you're looking to melt fat quickly, I'm talking about the belly fat around your stomach, your love handles, without having to do excessive, boring cardio. As a matter of fact, any cardio. Well, I have quite the solution for you. I have a 5-step, easy to follow protocol that's gonna help you burn fat fast. This protocol does not require you to count a single calorie, measure, weigh any food, or rely on willpower. In fact, these steps are really easy to follow. I've seen people lose over 30 pounds within 30 days by following these easy 5 steps. So let's start with the first step in your protocol, and that is to burn fat instead of sugar. When we think about how your metabolism works, there are 2 primary energy systems. The first system is the sugar burning, glucose burning, or even carbohydrate burning pathway. The same system, they just have different names. The other system is the fat burning pathway. Unfortunately, studies are showing that 93% of Americans are sugar burners. And if you want to burn fat, which is why you're watching or listening to this podcast episode, you want to teach your body to burn fat instead of sugar. When your metabolism is burning sugar, it requires high amounts of the hormone insulin. Insulin is an energy sensor, and when it's activated, when it's high, you're storing fat. So always remember, high insulin levels, fat storage. Low insulin levels, fat burning. When you are burning fat instead of sugar, you have low levels of insulin. And in a minute, I'll give you 2 easy steps to burn fat instead of sugar, but allow me to explain more why we don't want to be stuck burning sugar. When you are using sugar as your fuel source, it will age you faster, pack on the fat, lead to brain fog, fatigue, and chronic disease. That's because when you burn sugar as your primary energy source, it creates a lot of free radicals. I compare this to burning firewood. I'm here in my Keto Camp HQ headquarters in my studio. It's an enclosed room. There's no windows open right now. Imagine if I grabbed firewood as an energy source and I start burning that for energy. It'll create a lot of smoke. Think of the smoke as free radicals within your cells. That leads to oxidation, inflammation, aging, and fat gain, weight gain, because your cells become inflamed and then your fat burning hormones cannot do their job efficiently. Compare that to a fat burner. It's like using a gas stove instead of firewood. A gas stove burns very clean, doesn't have much smoke going on. There's not a lot of free radicals. When your cells are using fat, it's a cleaner source of energy. So how do you know if you're a sugar burner? I'm gonna ask you 5 questions right here. And if you say, yes, that's me, to at least 2 of the 5 questions, you are a sugar burner. The first question is, do you snack in between meals to sustain your energy levels and to feel full? Second question is, do you have brown patches on your body, typically underneath your armpit area? The third question is, do you have skin tags on your body, typically found around the neck and the eyelids? The fourth question is, do you feel tired in the afternoon? Do you get that afternoon energy slump? And it happens more often than not. And number 5, do you feel tired after eating a big meal? If you answered yes to 2 or more, you are a sugar burner. When you burn sugar, you pack on visceral fat. This is a type of fat, a white fat, that is highly inflammatory. It produces these inflammatory cytokines. The visceral fat applies pressure to your vital organs, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your pancreas. And when that fat accumulates over time, it triggers chronic disease. Hyperinsulinemia, also called insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure. It's the first domino to fall. When we switch to burning fat, we start pulling fat from the organs. It's converted into a more active fat called brown fat, and that is the goal. So here are the 2 easy steps to get into a fat burning state in the next 5 days. This is the first step in your protocol. First step is to gradually decrease your total carbohydrate intake. We have 3 macronutrients that we consume: carbohydrates, protein, and fat. When we think about how much glucose is raised in the body after eating a macronutrient, then we could understand which of these macronutrients get you the best glucose response. Remember, the more glucose that is increased after a meal, called postprandial glucose, the more insulin is required to deal with that blood sugar, and the more fat is packed on your body. It is carbohydrates that get you the biggest glucose and insulin response out of the three macronutrients. Sure, processed carbohydrates are worse than whole foods carbohydrates, but all carbohydrates will elicit a glucose and an insulin response. And if you want to burn fat, if you're a sugar burner, we want to mitigate that glucose and insulin response by lowering our carbohydrate intake. Protein and fat do not really get you a big glucose and insulin response. As a matter of fact, fat is very minimal and protein has what's considered a phase 2 response, which is moderate. So the first step is to gradually lower the carbohydrates. What's the upper limit? How many carbs can you have to be a fat burner? What I've seen is that we want to make sure we're not consuming more than 50 total grams of carbohydrates per day. When we hit that limit, when we go over that limit of 50 grams of carbohydrates per day, we tend to shift into a sugar burning metabolism. The average American is consuming somewhere around 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrates per day. That will get you stuck as a sugar burner. That'll prevent you from burning fat. You'll have high levels of insulin throughout the entire day. Not good if you're looking to burn fat. So gradually decrease your carbs. If you're the average American consuming over 300 grams of carbs per day, then each day in the next 5 days, start gradually decreasing your carbs until you reach a upper threshold of 50 grams of total carbohydrates per day. Those carbohydrates should come in the form of non-starchy vegetables, green leafy vegetables, low glycemic fruits such as berries, and heck, if you want to drop your carbs even below that, that's even better. I'm just giving you a little bit of some flexibility here. As you do that, you want to pair that first step with the second step, and that's called the 2-2-2 rule. I outlined this rule in a brand new book I have coming out in 2025 with Hay House called Metabolic Freedom, but I'm going to share the rule with you right now. Every day for the first 5 days, as you're lowering your carbs and transitioning to burning fat instead of sugar, you want to hit this 2-2-2 rule. So here's how it works. You want to consume 2 tablespoons of olive oil or avocado oil every day. The second 2 is 2 tablespoons of butter or ghee every day. The third 2 is 2 tablespoons of coconut oil or MCT oil every single day for those first 5 days. That's the 2-2-2 rule. Because as you lower your carbohydrates, which is what we're doing here on day 1, you're going to lower your glucose and insulin levels, which is really important. Your metabolism is going to start thinking, okay, we're starting to lose this energy source of glucose. There's not as much readily available because we're lowering our carbs. What else are we going to use? So by introducing these healthy fats with the 2-2-2 rule, it switches over to burning fatty acids for fuel. It's an easy transition to burn fat instead of sugar. And one of the questions I get asked is, am I consuming all these fats in a meal in one sitting? No, you're going to be consuming these fats throughout the entire day. So if you have 3 meals a day, think about the oils that you're using to cook your food in, your salad dressings, your dips. It's going to accumulate throughout the entire day, 2 tablespoons of each. If you feel like that's too much fat for you, then you could cut it in half and make it the 1-1-1 rule. A couple of considerations here. As we make this transition from sugar burning to fat burning, what's going to happen is your body is going to shed a lot of excess water weight. Terrific. You're going to look lighter, feel lighter, the scale's going to drop really rapidly, but there is an issue here. Your kidneys go through this diuresis process where it sheds a lot of water and electrolytes and minerals. So it is important, starting on day 1, as you're lowering your carbs, increasing your fats, to keep your electrolytes, your sea salt up and your minerals up. You could take a high quality electrolyte supplement. I'll drop a link for Redmond's is the one I use and I have a coupon code with them. Or you could just get a high quality sea salt and season your food with sea salt or drink it with water, especially those first 5 days as you make that transition to replenish the lost electrolytes. One more consideration before we move on to step number 2 in your protocol is that as you increase your dietary fat, which is what I want you to do, your liver is going to have to produce bile to break it down. Bile is a detergent that breaks down the fats you're going to start consuming. And those fats that you're consuming are vital for metabolism, energy production, fat loss, because those vitamins A, D, E, and K, which are all the fat-soluble vitamins, are used by your metabolism in your cells to generate energy and burn fat. Unfortunately, a lot of people have trouble breaking down fat because their liver is backed up through many years of just beating up the liver through medications, toxins, high carbohydrate processed foods, and alcohol. So as you increase your fats, we want to break it down. How do we support the liver to do this? You eat more bitters. I always say bitter for the liver. That liver is vital here for fat loss and to metabolize and break down these fats. So as you increase the fats, add in these bitters, arugula, artichokes, apple cider vinegar, which is great to have right before a meal, lemons, limes. You could have ginger tea, milk thistle tea, coffee, terrific bitter. I'm going to speak more about coffee, but eat those bitters, especially those first 5 days. If you find yourself having loose stools and diarrhea, it's an issue with your liver. Increase those bitters, or maybe even consider taking a digestive enzyme supplement that contains ox bile to break down the fat. Let's move on to the second step in your 5-step protocol, and that's going to be walking. And when I say walking, I mean getting 10,000 steps per day. But Ben, you said I don't have to do long, boring cardio. We're not looking at walking as a cardio session. We're looking at it as a way of incorporating into your lifestyle. And I'll share with you some hacks and tips to really get the biggest bang for your buck from your steps, but allow me to share why this is part of your protocol. If you're not getting those daily steps, it's going to be hard to burn fat. And walking has so many more benefits than just fat loss. It enhances longevity and overall health and vitality. A recent meta-analysis published by the European Society of Cardiology and the University of Massachusetts Amherst highlights the significant health benefits of walking just between 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day. This study, which analyzed studies from 15 studies involving nearly 50,000 participants, found that those who walked 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day reduced their risk of all-cause mortality by 50 to 70% compared to those who walked less than those steps. Another study from the Journal of Physiology showed that when you don't get enough movement and physical activity from steps, it makes it really difficult to burn fat. The study was titled "Physical Inactivity Causes Exercise Resistance of Fat Metabolism." And in the study, it shows this vicious cycle. You can see the illustration here, how inactivity impairs fat metabolism. And it leads to a sedentary lifestyle, which then leads to less fat being burned, more fat being stored, and it's a vicious cycle that it shows here in the Journal of Physiology. And here's what the study showed. The study said that recommendations regarding the amount of moderate to vigorous activity, or exercise, or we should just say steps in this case, needed for health should factor in the amount of back ride activity, but it said to get at least 8,000 steps per day to avoid exercise resistance. Now I'm saying 10,000 steps per day because you get more fat loss, increasing that to at least 10,000 steps per day. But there's more to this. There's 3 ways to enhance your steps to get even more fat loss. Let's start with the first way. That's gonna be walking at the right time. One of the best times to go for a walk and get your steps is right after your meal. If you could do it after all your meals, great, but if you could time it with the biggest meal of the day, you're going to get the biggest fat loss benefits. Earlier on in this lesson, I talked about this postprandial glucose response. That's the blood sugars that increase after eating a meal. Now, as you lower carbs and increase protein and fat, you should see a better postprandial glucose response. But if we can optimize that even more, you'll get even more fat loss. The less insulin produced after eating a meal, the more fat you're going to burn. And studies show that when you go for a walk 20 minutes after a meal, it dramatically reduces those blood sugar spikes from the meal. It does this by activating your GLUT4 transporters, which helps to shuttle sugar into your muscle and liver cells without having to use as much insulin. There are numerous studies on the benefits here, but I've highlighted one here that you can see on the screen, the effects of postprandial walking on glucose response after meals with different characteristics. The study showed that postprandial brisk walking substantially reduced the glucose peak in both studies with no significant differences across conditions. When evaluating the glycemic response throughout the 2 hours post-meal, postprandial walking was more effective after consuming a lower carbohydrate content meal and similarly effective after a mixed meal or a carbohydrate meal, a high carbohydrate meal. It said although higher glucose values were observed when consuming the higher carbohydrate drink, our findings show that a 30-minute postprandial brisk walking session improves the glycemic response after meals with different carbohydrate content and macronutrient composition. So I said 20 minutes after a meal, go for a walk. You could bump that up to 30 minutes according to the study. That is the sweet spot. The next thing you can do to enhance fat loss from these steps is to incorporate walking adaptations. Walking adaptations forces your body to adapt to different changes in patterns. This confuses your body and your muscles, which accelerates fat burning. Every great fitness coach, personal trainer, and even programs like P90X understand muscle confusion. You do different workouts, different reps, high rep, low rep, switch it up, keeps the body adapting and guessing, which continues the results for the person, you. And we could do that with walking. It all relates to the principle of hormesis. And I'm not gonna get too deep into hormesis, but essentially what it means, it's a stress that you intentionally apply, your body adapts to that stress, and then you get stronger and you burn more fat. So we could do that with walking. Here are the best ways to create walking adaptations. Number one, you could walk on an incline treadmill or a decline treadmill. It's a wonderful way to create adaptations. Number two, you could also, instead of a treadmill, walk up a hill, down a hill, somewhere where there's elevation. Great way to create adaptation. You could walk backward or sideways as well. Many ways to create adaptations here. And walking backward is great for your knees, by the way. Walking outside in the elements, whether it's cold and snowing or sunny and hot, great way to create adaptation. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator, great way to incorporate these exercise snacks. And when you go to the shopping center, parking far instead of trying to find a parking spot too close and getting those steps. These are all ways to get steps that all adds up to get the 10,000 steps per day. And the third way to enhance the fat loss from steps is to increase the intensity of those steps. When most people go for a walk, they do it at a casual pace, which doesn't really elevate the metabolism enough to burn the extra fat and calories. When you increase your speed, you create an energy demand on the body, which forces your body to create and increase in metabolic rate. A good walking pace to achieve this is to try the talking and walking test. If your intensity is at an optimal level for fat loss, you should be somewhat out of breath as you are walking. Not completely, but you should have some difficulty walking and talking. It should sound something like this, where you're talking, but you need to take some breaths. By adding a dumbbell to each hand, that's another way to add intensity. You could add a weighted vest as well. This is more of an advanced tip, but the more you can incorporate adaptations and intensity to your walks, the more fat loss you're going to achieve. When you get these steps in and add the intensity and adaptation, it really recruits a lot of your lower body muscles, which enhances your metabolic rate. And at the end of the day, helps you burn more fat. Personally, I get about 12,000 to 15,000 steps per day, but get at least 10,000 steps per day to burn a lot of fat. You could use different trackers like a Fitbit, Apple Watch. I have this Oura ring, which tracks my sleep and my steps. I'll drop a link for this Oura ring in the notes down below. The third step in your protocol is after you get fat adapted, so after day 5, focus on protein. Hit your target protein number. The reason we want to do this, there's many reasons, but the primary reason is that when you get enough protein in your meals, you activate something called MPS, which is muscle protein synthesis. Muscle is a longevity organ, but it's so important for burning fat. The more lean muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitive you are. Muscle is kind of like a sponge to absorb glucose, which requires less insulin to be produced, and at the end of the day, more fat is burned. If you get at least 40 grams of protein at all of your meals, you activate this muscle protein synthesis. Not only will it create this muscle building process, no, you're not gonna turn into a bodybuilder, you're just gonna preserve and build lean muscle mass. Protein also keeps you full and satiated. Protein activates hormones and chemicals inside of your body, such as cholecystokinin, leptin, peptide YY, which are all signals to your brain, to your body, you're full, you're satiated. There's no need to eat the Oreos or the Cheetos or to order or Uber Eats your favorite donut shop. No, you're full, you're satiated. Think about when you go to a restaurant. Let's say you ate a 16-ounce steak. That's a lot of protein. That's, I don't know, I'd have to check, but 75 grams of protein probably. So you're way over that 40-gram threshold, which is great. And let's say the restaurant owner is so impressed that you ate the 16-ounce, you ate it clean, you finished it completely. He comes and says, I wanna reward you with another 16-ounce ribeye. That's gonna be tough to do because that protein is super satiating. But if they came to your table with a dessert cart and said, do you want this ice cream or this pie or this soda? Oh sure, I could fit that in because carbohydrates, especially carbs that are processed, do not activate those hormones and chemicals. Eating protein also stimulates thermogenesis, which is the process of production of heat production inside of the body, which can increase basal metabolic rate, which leads to more efficient fat loss, preservation of muscle mass, and contributing to a leaner body composition. The best protein sources out there are animal-based proteins. These are complete versus plant-based proteins that are incomplete and typically contain anti-nutrients. So the following sources of protein are going to be ideal: beef, lamb, chicken, turkey, bison, organ meats, eggs with the yolks, wild-caught small fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and herring, and mackerel. These are great. Now, how much protein should you have every day? That's the topic right now. That's gonna be 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So for example, if you're watching or listening to this and you weigh 215 pounds, but your ideal body weight, your goal weight is 175 pounds, then you wanna aim to get 175 grams of protein per day. Now you start this after day 5. First you get fat adapted, then we focus on the protein. On day 5 or after day 5, you're not doing that 2-2-2-2 rule anymore. You're focusing on protein. There's no calculation for fat. You're getting the fat that comes with the protein, and you're still keeping your total carbohydrates at 50 grams total or less per day. Protein is the focus here. You could use free apps to track your protein, to track your macros, and I personally use the one called Cronometer, and you could get it for free over at cronometer.com/ketocamp. The fourth step in your protocol, and you're gonna practice this in combination with tip number 3 after you're fat adapted and start focusing on protein, you're gonna incorporate this step in your protocol, and that's gonna be early time restricted feeding. Another name for this is intermittent fasting, but we're doing it early. Allow me to explain. There are different ways to practice fasting, but fasting is probably the best way to lower inflammation, lower insulin, burn fat, preserve lean muscle mass, build lean muscle mass, fix your metabolism, fix your brain, restore your gut, and prevent cancer and other chronic diseases. I can go on and on about fasting. Now, fasting is a stress, and it is a great stress when you adapt to it and practice it the way that I'm gonna teach it to you, but if you do too much, it could be too much of a stress for your body to adapt to, and you don't get the results. So what I want you to do is an 18-6 early time restricted feeding schedule. That might sound like a different language if you have no idea what I'm talking about, but let me unpack that and teach you how to do this the right way. It's based off of a 24-hour period. The 18 in the 18-6 is 18 hours. For 18 hours, you're going to be fasted. You're going to be in the fasted state. There's the fed state, you eat food. There's the fasted state, you're not eating food. And in your fasted state, you're only going to have your water, your supplements, coffee or tea, no food, no snacks, none of that. You're going to use that period to lower insulin. I'll teach you more about what's happening during that period. Then you have 6 hours to eat your meals. You could have 2 to 3 meals within the 6 hours. And you wanna get your protein requirements within this 6-hour window, get the fat that comes with the protein, keep your carbohydrates under 50 grams total within those 2 to 3 meals. But I said earlier that we're gonna do early time restricted feeding. So that means this would work even better if your eating window was earlier in the day. A lot of people who practice time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting, and hey, I'm guilty of doing this myself, they tend to skip breakfast and have lunch and dinner, which is beneficial. I do it most days. But the research shows our circadian rhythm, all of our hormones, including our fat burning hormones, it's designed to eat our calories earlier in the day, meaning if we had breakfast and lunch and skip dinner, we'll get more fat loss. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of research from Dr. Sachin Panda in his clinic on the benefits of eating most of your calories earlier in the day. There's also a study from Dr. Courtney Peterson from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, which took 2 groups of participants. They were both on an 18-6 time restricted schedule, like what I just taught you, but one group ate in the window I just explained. They had their meals between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Then they fasted from 2 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. The other group, same time fasted, same time eating, but instead of having breakfast and lunch, they skipped breakfast and ate between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. and then fasted until 12 p.m. the next day. What they found was after 4 days of doing this, the group that ate early that had breakfast and lunch and finished eating by 2 p.m. had 22% more autophagy after 4 days. And they measured this by the LC3A protein in the lab. Autophagy is critical for cleaning out junk within your body. It's like Pac-Man going within your cells, looking for damaged cells and mitochondria. There's autophagy and mitophagy, and these are all, scientific terms. But just think of Pac-Man cleaning out the junk. Your body is so smart and so sophisticated, your metabolism is incredible, it goes for the damaged cells during a fast. You get autophagy through walking, as I mentioned earlier, exercise, strength training, which is all important, and also through fasting. So you get more when you have your calories earlier in the day versus later. They also looked at the sirtuins. The sirtuin genes are called longevity genes. The more they're activated, the more it protects your DNA from damage. The longer you live, the less likely you are to get cancer. And there was an 11% increase in the sirtuins in the group that ate early after 4 days versus the other group. So on your calendar, what it's gonna look like is you're going to eat between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. every day, or if you can't do every day, most days, and then from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. the next day, you're gonna be in a fasted state. The fifth tip in your protocol is to get 90 minutes of deep delta sleep and REM sleep every night. We hear a lot of people talk about the importance of sleep, and they're spot on. But I also hear a lot of people say get 8 hours of sleep each night. It's not really about the quantity of sleep you're getting, it's about the quality. And we go through 3 different major stages of sleep each night. We go through light sleep, which has some benefits. You're in a relaxed parasympathetic state. Then we have REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. This is where you consolidate memory. You take short-term memory and process it for long-term memory. Really important for critical thinking, productivity, to get rid of brain fog. Then we have the third stage of sleep, which is deep delta sleep. This stage is really important for fat loss. Most of your fat-burning hormones are activated during delta deep sleep. You also activate the glymphatic system during this process where your brain literally shrinks in size, about 20% shrinkage, where it allows this dishwasher-like fluid from your cerebral spinal fluid to flush out accumulated plaques and proteins and toxins from the brain, preventing brain degeneration. This is an amazing process. So fat burning, brain cleaning, all this is happening during deep delta sleep. And you want to get 90 minutes of REM, 90 minutes of deep delta sleep. That means you're gonna feel incredible, you're gonna burn fat, you're gonna wake up feeling refreshed. And there are some ways you could increase your deep and REM sleep. Allow me to share my favorite ways to do so. The first step is banana tea. I learned about this from my colleague, Dr. Michael Bruce. Banana tea is nature's NyQuil. It turns out the peel of the banana has more of these micronutrients, potassium and magnesium and others, than the banana itself. So what you want to do is grab a whole banana, organic, cut the ends off, then cut that banana in half. The peel is still on, you're just cutting it in half, putting it into a pot of water, a couple cups of water, and let it boil until the peel starts to brown a little bit. Once that happens, which typically takes about 3 minutes, you then pour that into a cup, this is your banana tea, and then you drink it. It calms the brain. It relaxes the body. It helps you get into a nice restorative state so you could go to bed and get some fat burning sleep. You're not gonna eat the banana, you're gonna discard that, put it into the freezer. The banana tea does not break a fast, does not raise glucose, you're just getting all the minerals, potassium, micronutrients from the banana peel. You also wanna make sure your bedroom is cold. In order to get good deep delta sleep, your body temperature needs to drop. One of the benefits with your early time restricted feeding is that you're gonna have a lot of hours of digestion before sleep, which helps to lower your body temperature. So that's another benefit of that early time restricted feeding protocol. But you wanna put your thermostat, studies show, anywhere between 63 degrees Fahrenheit to 67 degrees Fahrenheit to have that body temperature drop, get into that delta deep sleep to activate those fat burning hormones. I personally put my thermostat to 63 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have a cooling mattress, which I set to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. You also wanna make sure your bedroom's as dark as possible. You could use blackout curtains, or what I do is I wear a sleep mask, and I'll drop a link for the sleep mask I use in the notes down below. And the last thing here is you want to probably mouth tape. Sounds crazy. But when you mouth tape, and it's an adhesive you just put over your mouth, it forces you to breathe through your nostrils. Why is that important? That's where you get deep delta sleep. That's where you increase nitric oxide, which is a very important gaseous molecule which vasodilates your blood vessels. It's a signaling molecule for cells. So many benefits to nitric oxide. When you breathe through your mouth, which I typically do, you deplete nitric oxide. It wakes you up in the middle of the night. You don't get a lot of deep sleep. So by training your body to breathe through your nose with mouth tape, you're going to get an influx of nitric oxide and deep delta sleep. So I use a company called Somnifix. I just put an adhesive over my mouth at night, take it off in the morning, and I'll drop a link for them down below. How do you track your sleep? How do you know how much deep and delta and REM sleep you're getting? I use the Oura Ring, and I'll drop a link for them down below. I mentioned them earlier. It also tracks your steps. There's also products like the Whoop Band, Apple Watches, and Fitbits. Apple Watches and Fitbits are not as accurate as a Whoop Band or an Oura Ring, but at least it gives you data. If you don't get quality sleep, I know it's not too sexy to talk about sleep, but look, if you're not getting that quality sleep, studies are showing you're gonna have higher levels of cortisol the next day, your stress hormone. Glucose follows cortisol, and then you're gonna have higher levels of the hormone ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and less levels of the hormone leptin, which is your satiety hormone. All bad. That is your 5-step protocol. I have a bonus tip for you, and these are my favorite fat-burning biohacks and supplements, and this is for those who really wanna go all in with the protocol and see the fastest results. There are 2 great biohacks I wanna share with you that really enhance fat loss. This creates a process called mitohormesis. That means we're stressing in a positive way your mitochondria to create more mitochondria, which raises your basal metabolic rate and increases brown fat in the body. Brown fat is the preferred fat. It's brown because it has a lot of mitochondria, but it's very metabolically active, so it raises your basal metabolic rate. The white fat we spoke about earlier is the bad fat, the visceral fat, that is not metabolically demanding and slows your metabolism. So the first thing here is cold exposure. You could do this by getting into a cold plunge, doing cryotherapy, taking a cold shower. If the pipes in your house or apartment get cold enough, studies show it needs to be at least 59 degrees Fahrenheit or less to get the effect here we're looking for. And when you expose your body to cold temperatures, it's a shock to the system. And what happens is that stress creates healthier mitochondria. It takes white fat, turns it into beige fat into brown fat, and you get an increase in dopamine, helps with resiliency, mental clarity, but we're looking for the fat loss benefits. And if you're new to cold plunging and cold exposure, start very slow, maybe 15 seconds, and then build it up. The goal, the studies show, if you could get 11 minutes total per 7 days, so per week, 11 minutes total of cold exposure, you're going to get all the benefits we're looking for here as it pertains to fat loss, health, and longevity. So that doesn't mean you do one session at 11 minutes. Some people do that. I would recommend adding them up throughout the week. So 2 minutes, etc., until you achieve 11 minutes total at least 59 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Personally, you can see the photo here on the screen. I use a plunge from plunge.com. I have it in my backyard. They're amazing. It has a filtration system. We have a coupon code for you. You get a few $100s off your plunge, which is Keto Camp over at plunge.com. The second one here is the opposite of cold exposure, and that's going to be heat exposure. Sauna therapy. There are different saunas out there. There's dry sauna, steam sauna, infrared sauna. Sauna does something similar as cold plunging, where it stresses your mitochondria. It activates heat shock proteins versus the cold exposure activates cold shock proteins. Both are beneficial. Now, cold exposure vasoconstricts your cells short term and then opens it up. What does that actually do? When you vasoconstrict short term, what happens is your blood vessels start to close slightly, and then when you get out of the cold exposure, it opens up and then things flow. So you increase your immune system, you sensitize hormones like insulin and testosterone, all great. Now with a sauna or a heat exposure, you vasodilate. You open up the blood vessels and you allow oxygen and nutrients and hormones to reach their targets more effectively. When you are in a sauna, you are stressing the body to create healthier mitochondria. You're creating an increase in your basal metabolic rate. You're reducing your risk of heart disease dramatically. So you wanna get about 90 minutes of heat exposure every 7 days, every week. I typically do 20-minute, 30-minute sessions and add that up until I get the 90 minutes total per week. There are different types of saunas out there. You might want to, if you don't want to invest in one, you could find a clinic that has one, a biohacking clinic or a chiropractor. I use the one from Sunlighten. You can see a photo of me getting into this beautiful infrared sauna. It has near infrared, mid infrared, far infrared, red light therapy with the heat exposure, which gets you even more benefits. And we have a coupon code with Sunlighten, which is KetoCamp, to get $600 off your Sunlighten. I'll drop that link down below. Now let's discuss some biohacking supplements that you can consume to really enhance results. And that's gonna be coffee. So for my coffee fans out there, you're probably really excited about this tip. Coffee has a very powerful polyphenol called chlorogenic acid, called CGA. This tells your body's fat cells to burn their fatty acids for fuel. This is the same mechanism that statin drugs use to lower cholesterol without the potential side effects. CGA cuts cravings, suppresses appetite, activates the liver to produce bile. We talked about why that's super important earlier, and it aids in detoxifying your cells. CGA helps the liver to process fats and glucose more efficiently by lowering your triglyceride levels and stabilizing blood sugars. The effect of this blood sugar balancing act decreases your risk of metabolic syndrome and diabetes while inhibiting the growth of new fat cells. Working together with the caffeine, the CGA helps to reduce belly fat by increasing the number of cells that are burned for energy. It even works while you're sleeping. There was a Norwegian study that showed women who drank high CGA coffee dropped 3 times more weight than those who consumed lower CGA brews. But I have to give you a huge disclaimer here. Not all coffee beans are created equal. What we want from our coffee is for it to be organic, mold-free, pesticide-free, heavy metal-free, and we also want to choose a medium roast as opposed to a dark roast. Once the beans have been roasted beyond medium, they lose about 75% of the fat-blasting polyphenols that we just mentioned. We also like coffee that's grown in high altitudes that are tested for contaminants. So personally, I drink all the time Purity Coffee. They meet all my requirements. They have a medium roast, and if you go to ketocampcoffee.com and use the coupon code KETOCAMP, that's camp with a K, you can get 15% off your Purity Coffee. As far as supplements go, there are a few ingredients that I've researched over the years that really have a beneficial effect for fat loss. African mango is an ingredient that promotes weight loss, especially around your waist and hips. Raspberry ketones help with a hormone called adiponectin, which is a fat-burning hormone. L-carnitine helps to kind of shuttle energy to your mitochondria for it to burn fat more efficiently. Green tea leaf extract contains catechins, EGCG, which is great for your metabolism and belly fat, and an ingredient called forskolin extract, which is derived from mint plants, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, balance your hormone leptin, and help you feel full and satiated. So you can find all those individual ingredients and take it separately. Personally, I use a product that contains all of them together. It's called Radical Metabolism or Metabolizer by Unikey. And if you go to unikey.com/ketocamp and use the coupon code KETOCAMP10, you can get 10% off that product. I'll drop the link down below. Now let's get to the most common questions I get asked when I lecture on this topic. The first question is this: Ben, you teach on the benefits of quality sleep for fat loss. I've been in the habit of waking up early to go to the gym. Should I continue doing this? It depends. I love that you're dedicated to go to the gym, and strength training is incredible for increasing muscle mass, and we talked about the benefits of that. But if you're sacrificing sleep to wake up early and go to the gym, I would not recommend that. I would recommend focusing on sleep, getting those 90 minutes of REM and deep sleep, and then figuring out a way to get the exercise after that. So it really depends. So I see a lot of people who sacrifice sleep to go work out. I believe you're doing it wrong. Focus on the sleep first, and if you're getting quality sleep and tracking it, getting the 90 minutes of REM and deep, then yeah, throw in the gym workout. I think that's terrific. Next question is, I've heard that intermittent fasting can wreck hormones and metabolism, yet you suggest it all the time. Can you give me more insights on fasting? As I mentioned earlier, fasting is a stress that can be hugely positive and beneficial if you adapt to the stress. So as long as you're getting in enough food and protein and getting quality sleep with that 18-6 fasting schedule I gave you, you're gonna be in that sweet hormetic zone that we spoke about earlier. But if you do too much fasting, yeah, it could wreck your hormones and wreck your metabolism. A lot of people think that I need to snack to rev up my metabolism, and if I skip a meal or practice fasting, it's gonna slow my metabolism. Eating every 2 to 3 hours and snacking does not rev up your metabolism, it destroys it, it ages you faster. And fasting does not lower your metabolism, it actually makes it more efficient. There was a study that showed 4 consecutive days of fasting helped the metabolism become more efficient by 13%. That's because when you're in a fasted state, it activates counter-regulatory hormones. These are hormones that run counter to insulin. When you fast, every hour you're in that fast, insulin continues to drop. Very important for fat loss. But what happens is these other hormones start to increase as well. Cortisol, human growth hormone, adrenaline. And people say, oh my gosh, cortisol is getting activated. It's such a mild activation just to get you energy. It's not a bad cortisol response. Cortisol is not bad unless it's chronically elevated. So with this counter-regulatory hormone production, it preserves your metabolism and actually makes it more efficient. So you think about it, your body thinks you're going through a famine. It does not know you could click on your phone, like I have my phone here, and go to Uber Eats and have somebody knocking on my door in 20, 30 minutes. It's hardwired for the old school. It's pumping you full of energy so you can go out there and hunt and kill. So you could use that to be productive and to burn fat. Next question is, I heard apple cider vinegar is great for fat loss. Is this true? It can be, especially if you time it right before your meals. Not only will it help your liver produce bile to break down the fat in your meals, it really helps with that postprandial glucose response we spoke about earlier. Studies suggest you could see a 34% reduction in the postprandial glucose response with 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before your meal. So yeah, in that scenario, it could help with fat loss. The next question is, what are your thoughts on refeed days? I love refeed days. I call them keto flex days, but they're not cheat days, they're feast days. In the context of this protocol, we're not doing refeed days, we're not doing flex days or feast days. I want you to stick with this for at least 30 days, this protocol I gave you, and then incorporate a healthy, high carb day, high protein, low fat day. And I have a lot of videos on how to do that here on this channel and on my Metabolic Freedom podcast. The next question is, Ben, do you offer coaching and a system for getting healthy and losing weight? I have a lot of videos on fat loss and getting healthy, but look, if you're looking for it to be all put together for you in a system to get coaching from me directly and my coaches, I have an entire system we built out, and it's the world's greatest online health coaching program, and it's all taken care of free. You just watch these videos, follow the steps, you get coaching from me, you get one-on-one coaching from my health coaches as well, and that's over at KetoCampAcademy.com. We have 3 different membership tiers, as low as $67 a month to as high as $497 a month, depending on which tier you want to get in at. But if you go to KetoCampAcademy.com, you can learn more about my coaching. If you enjoyed this video, you're gonna love a recent video I just published on the fastest way to lose stubborn arm fat and get rid of loose, flabby skin. You'll see a theme here with the protocol is to increase your lean muscle mass. If you think about it, the more lean muscle you have on your arms or on your body in general, the more firm your skin is going to appear. That's because it's going to give you the appearance of tight skin when you build lean muscle mass. And the most important macro